So the first thing I'm going to evaluate is a writing paper that I've been using with my students. In January, they were introduced to informational writing. So they're supposed to learn how to write how to step-by-step story to teach somebody how to do something. So the first story that I decided to use with my students was how to build a snowman. Many of them already have that background knowledge of how to build a snowman. And this is a copy of what they would get. I just shrunk it down, but everybody would get their own paper and each step's on one page. So it is how to build a snowman. What do you do first, next, then, last? Now you know how to. The idea was for them to already have the pictures done for them, so they don't have to think too much about the pictures, just talking about the words at first. When I looked at the UDL guidelines, some positives I found were that this paper was able to kind of give the students a model. So they were able to look at it, get an idea. Plus, we did a whole group at first. I was able to activate their background knowledge of how to build a snowman. Hopefully, then they can transition to write that onto a paper. So the varying demands and resources to optimize challenge, it looks like that I didn't allow that. However, I do have varying different writing paper styles that can be used. There are some that already have the words written, and I do have some without the words already written for the students that are more advanced and ready to just continue to write independently. It also optimizes their relevance, value, and authenticity by making a meaningful connection to building a snowman, since many students enjoy this and love it when it snows, and it is age and ability appropriate. Some of the negatives were that it doesn't really allow for individual choice, since I am giving them the topic that they have to write about, but they are given more freedom later as their writing develops about writing how-to stories. So I typically give them the prompt at first. So the first prompt was how to build a snowman. Then they go to how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then after that, they're kind of given a little bit more free rein to teach somebody how to do something that they're really good at. It might be playing soccer, it might be dancing or playing the violin, anything that they feel like they excel at. It does not offer any alternatives for the visual information. So I feel like a student who may have some visual impairments would struggle with this. I'm not familiar with any assistive technologies to help students that have visual impairments with writing, since the pictures are there for you, unless you had somebody tell them step by step what they would see in the pictures. Okay, so for using the multiple media for communication, they aren't really able to use various media and resources. This is a paper and pencil test. But I think that probably it could be more, you could expand into it if it were strictly online. Students could kind of type on there. They could also print it off, do paper, pencil, whatever they're more comfortable with. And it doesn't foster collaboration and community because students are working independently on their own writing. They aren't writing a story together with other students. The online accessibility handbook, a few things I found were that I do have some headings. So how to build a snowman, it's bold, tells you what they're going to be doing. At the top, you have your first, next, then finally, and then your ending. There are some images there, however, it lacks the color for students who maybe have visual impairments. And I put images in positive and negative because the images don't have a link or anything that you could click on that could be read by a device. So that is a downfall, that they may not know exactly what this object is. As far as with the book, Rice had talked a lot about like assistive technologies and things like that, but I have never encountered a student who has assistive technologies, and I definitely would be very nervous having to teach a student with an assistive technology, and I'd have to do a lot of research, probably go to my tech department to help me more, just because I feel like I definitely have never encountered a student, but I feel like we kind of lack that within my elementary school. The positives were that students do receive one-on-one support during writing many times per week, and if there is one student in particular struggling more compared to their peers, we always make sure they have somebody who can work with them. Whether it's me or the reading specialist or an assistant, we do make sure that the students are kind of grouped where they need to be. So that was my very first tool to talk about. The next one, this one we focus more on in the springtime when we talk about living and non-living things, and this is actually a PowerPoint presentation, and students get to use a smartboard for this. So they will come up to the board and just kind of like more of, I guess, a summative assessment. Students get to pick any object, and then they have to click and drag that object to the correct column, but then they have to tell us or tell me why they dragged that object there. So they might say, I chose this woman is living because she needs water, she needs food, she needs air to breathe to stay alive, and then maybe the next student will drag that one onto the non-living side and give their reasons as to why they feel that is non-living. For the UDL guidelines, a lot of positives were that there is a collaboration of community because this is done whole group and the students can talk about it with one another as to why they picked the object and put it in the column that they decided to do that. So I said about how it heightens the salience of goals and objectives, since students must explain why they moved a particular object to the column that they did. And it does optimize the relevance, value, and authenticity because it does connect to real world things, because they do need to be aware of things that are living and non-living within our real world. Some of the negatives or the guidelines that it did not follow were offering, again, the alternatives for visual impairments. Students who possibly are blind or have difficulties would need a lot of support knowing where they are touching on the board and dragging to which column. Also, it doesn't really access tools and assistive technologies. I'm not sure how I would be able to go about doing that necessarily. And it doesn't really vary demands and resources, since they are specifically using this Smartboard PowerPoint. And then having that individual choice to kind of tell me, this isn't the only way that I evaluate and assess their knowledge of living and non-living things, just one way. And then as far as the handbook, it does provide, the PowerPoint does provide some images, clip art, shapes, and it has a nice contrast of colors. The negatives would be, I'm not sure how it would be with the reading order. So if there were an assistive technology trying to read this, I think it would be challenging. They would see these things, these words, living and non-living, and would probably be able to read them, but it might be confused since I said tables are negative as far as knowing, okay, well, where's the separation? Since I do just have one line in the middle, but then kind of the pictures are all jumbled there at the bottom. And then the positives with Rice were that all students have received training on how to use the smartboard and move the items on the board. And this is done at the beginning of the year. And students are also given necessary support if they need help with moving and dragging the pictures. Sometimes the technology doesn't work correctly, so I am right beside them to help them. There is a lack of knowledge as far as their assistive technologies available to use with the PowerPoint. I'm sure there's plenty of great ideas. I'm just definitely not familiar with all of them. But those are the two things. And if anybody has any ideas of how to help me improve them to help students and with technologies, just let me know. Thanks.